Welcome to the ACICS AWARE webinar. AWARE stands for the ACICS webinar announcing, relating, and explaining the January 2016 memorandum to the field. This webinar will take approximately 1 hour. I will introduce today's presenters, who will be Dr. Albert C. Gray, our President and CEO of ACICS, as well as Ms. Susan Greer, Vice President of Accreditation Operations, and myself, Mr. Ian Harrisduck, Senior Manager of Policy and Compliance. Today we will have some introductory statements from Dr. Gray, as well as a plug for our 2016 ACICS Professional Development Conference. Then we will get into the major topic of this webinar, which are the final changes to the accreditation criteria. And please note for each criteria change, as some will be as of January 1st, 2016, which obviously means they're in effect already, and others will be July 1st, 2016. We will also have an opportunity for questions and comments, so please submit your questions through our question feature as they arise. You can do so throughout the presentation. We will hold answering those questions until the end of the presentation, but please feel free to submit the questions as we go along. I'll now throw it to Dr. Gray.
Thank you, Ian. This is Al Gray. I'd like to extend my greetings to all from beautiful downtown Washington, D.C. here at ACICS headquarters, where we're told we're about to be stricken with a blizzard. You know, two things you can count on when snow comes to Washington. One, the federal government will close its doors, and secondly, the most oft-heard phrase will be, abandon your cars. And I want to welcome everybody to the AWARE webinar today, which we are glad to present for your information as always, and as we always do following a council meeting where changes have been made in policy and or criteria. Secondly, I want to thank all of you for your engagement, your continued engagement and interest as you work to the benefit of our students. And with that, I guess I'd like to take a few moments to plug our annual conference. As you know, this is going to be our 6th annual conference. They get better, bigger, and better every year, and this one will be the best yet. We'll be in Fort Worth, Texas. It'll be a great opportunity for those who attend to share best practices and get information on best practices in our sector and in accreditation, as well as receive updates on ACICS procedures, policies, etc. And it's also an outstanding opportunity for you to interact with your peers. So save the dates for the conference, May 11th through 13th, 2016, and we look forward to seeing as many of you there as can attend. And with that, let me turn it over back to Ian.
So as I mentioned, we'll be going over the 2016, the January 2016 memorandum to the field. You can find that on our website as shown here under Council Actions and then Memorandum to the Field if you'd like to follow along at home. But we will move now to the main topic of this webinar, which is the final criteria revisions that took place at the December 2015 council meeting. So I will go over quickly, introduce each of the items, and then we will go over in more detail what these mean. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them throughout the webinar, and we'll answer them at the end. We'll go over the changes to the council action process, changes to the unannounced visits policy, community resources, changes to the teaching loads at the non-degree and occupational associates level, changes to faculty assignments, particularly applied general education, once again at the non-degree and occupational associates level, glossary of definitions, some changes to those terms. Faculty preparation, final changes to that. Some changes to the admission and recruitment policies. The campus effectiveness plan. Branch and learning site procedures. And finally, faculty assignments at the doctoral level. Once we conclude our statements on those, we'll get into some Q&A. That will be the entirety of the webinar session. So I will begin with the council action process. I'll note up front that it's effective January 1st, 2016. I'm not sure if you all can see that on your screen, but I think it's there. So this is effective January 1st, 2016, and it's a final revision to the criteria. So please note this is already in effect. There are some key components to the changes. The first is now we will definitively, the council, will definitively indicate when an institution is out of compliance. And that will be done through a couple of changes in terminology. The first is a compliance warning, which is a term that ACICS had been using for student achievement and now is using throughout processes, including on-site visits, adverse and complaints issues, as well as a review of annual reports such as student achievement and financial reviews. So a compliance warning will be issued when an institution is found out of compliance. So whenever the council determines such, they will issue a compliance warning. A show cause directive, which as you know is a term we've been using, but we've changed the definition to now it will be issued if the council determines that an institution is unlikely to become in compliance within the maximum time frame required by our standards. Of course, institutions will be provided procedural guarantees that allows it to respond to written areas of noncompliance. So in any case where an issue is brought up, the institution will receive the status, compliance warning, show cause directive, as well as any other in writing and have the opportunity to respond in writing. If you'd like to see a visual description of this change to the council action process, on page 20 of the most recent memo to the field, there is a description, a flow chart that will show you what actions can be taken and what the process is for that. In addition, with these key changes, there have been some changes throughout the criteria because of the changes to show cause directive as well as the new implementation of compliance warning. Some criteria sections that had those statuses within them have been changed to make sure the terminology fits with this new change. So those are the council action process, and again, remember, those are effective as of January 1st, 2016, so we are using that new council action process as we speak. I will move on to unannounced visits. This change is effective July 1st, 2016. So there are a few months until this goes into effect. There's one main change to this, which is that the council, at its discretion, may direct a visit without prior notice. So previously, it was if an institution was in question or there was some suspicion, the council's now changed it to where it can be directed at any given time. That is the change for unannounced visits. I will continue and move along to community resources. Again, this is effective July 1st, 2016, and this is particular to on-site reviews for the most part. So coming in the fall cycle, the September-October 2016 cycle is when we'll be implementing this into the reports as well as reviewing this new final change to the criteria, which says that now institutions have to have a variety of activities in each and every program. So it's basically clarifying the language that was in the community resources section previously. That's section 3-1-512C. So in addition to a variety of activities in every program, the institution, or these activities also must focus on student enrichment and career opportunities. So that language is now included within that section. I will move along to teaching loads. Once again, another revision that is effective July 1st, 2016. This is for sections 3-2-101 and 3-3-303. That is the non-degree and occupational associate's degree levels. These teaching loads, the language now fits the language that's in the academic associate's and bachelor's degree levels, which basically states that teaching loads should be just reasonable and justifiable, meaning that there's been a revision to the specific maximum number of teaching hours per week. We now require that the teaching loads be reasonable and justified, and this is based on a number of things, such as the number of preparations an instructor has, the type of instruction that an instructor has, the size of classes, along with a number of other academic and administrative duties that are listed in the criteria. Finally, again, once this is implemented July 1st, 2016 and goes in effect the fall cycle, on-site teams will make a judgment based on the teacher's overall responsibilities, whether the teaching loads are appropriate or not. I'll have one more before I pass it over. So this is faculty assignments for applied general education. That's sections 3-2-104 and 3-3-202. Again, dealing with the non-degree and occupational associate's degree programs. The requirements now are that a bachelor's degree and appropriate coursework are required for teaching applied general education. I will note that we had some comments from the field, so thank you all in the field for sending those comments, and we actually did have a change to the proposed language that was proposed following the August meeting. And in the December meeting, now we have in this standard section 3-2-104, general education in non-degree programs requires a master's degree and appropriate coursework, similar to any other requirement at any other level, at the associate's and the bachelor's level for general education. So an applied general education just requires a bachelor's degree and appropriate coursework, and standard general education courses require a master's degree and appropriate coursework. And also within this change is that doctoral coursework may be used to qualify faculty members to teach applied general education courses. So of course, if they have coursework at that level, that would certainly be allowed to qualify an individual for applied general education courses. With all that said, I'll throw it over to Ms. Susan Greer, who will talk about some changes to the glossary.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you, Ian. He went through much more detail on his slides. I'm going to give you as much background as many of, or the couple that I have. They're pretty non-complex. The glossary definition has several components of it where we revised the definition of lecture, laboratory, and in-service training, and so it was incorporated in a few areas. Number one is the removal of dated language with respect to those components, lecture, laboratory, and in-service training. And then the clarification that students must be working under the supervision of an instructor during laboratory hours. Again, this goes into effect July 1st, 2016. So if there are questions on some of this, we'll most definitely entertain them tonight or today. But know that you can reach out to any staff between now and then also and ask for further clarifications if you have institution-specific questions. The next slide that I'm going to address is the faculty preparation. This also is effective July 1st, 2016. It's section 3-1-541. And the council revised the list of acceptable agencies for the evaluation of foreign credentials. This addition of ACRO again to the list of accredited agencies for evaluation of foreign credentials was in our criteria for a period of time. It was removed during a period where it wasn't really intended to remove it as an element, so we're putting it back. Obviously, ACRO is a recognized and qualified agency for this purpose. And I'm going to throw the slides back to Ian Harstick.
Thank you, Sue. I'll do a couple before I throw it back to Sue. So this is the admission and recruitment, some changes within those policies. Again, effective July 1st, 2016. And as Sue said, if you have any questions, please give them throughout this webinar, and we'll answer them at the end as best we can. And of course, we'll have a few months for those that are effective in July to discuss as well. But the changes to these, to this is mainly clarifying the language. To state that institutions are required to monitor admissions and recruitment activities. So it's a requirement to supervise anybody doing those activities. And then, of course, these activities may not be delegated to anyone who's recruiting through unethical means or subject to public scrutiny or to admit ill-prepared applicants. And by ill-prepared applicants, we basically mean any individual or prospective student that clearly does not meet the institution's own published admissions policy. So those are two relatively basic changes that are just clarifying some language we had in Section 3-1-410. Moving on to a few changes to the campus effectiveness plan, again, effective July 1st, 2016. So I know people seeing this will need to make some changes to their CEP, but again, you have a few months until this goes into effect. But of course, if you're listening to this, you'll want to probably get started on this relatively soon so you can have all this incorporated by the time July comes. So some key components of this change. We deleted some language that hadn't been implemented by ACICS, so we're cleaning up some of the criteria so it's clear exactly what we're looking for and is not confused by some language that didn't go into effect. Furthermore, we are clarifying the definitions that relate to CEP, so there have been some changes to the glossary for student satisfaction, or excuse me, for outcomes and placement rate, employer satisfaction, graduate satisfaction, so a number of those which are all detailed throughout the memo to the field. There have been some changes to that language. In addition, we are encouraging institutions, it's not required, but certainly encouraged, to add additional elements in the plan that are not mandated by ACICS. This includes graduation rates. We encourage institutions to certainly look at their graduation rates and have that as part of their CEP, as well as cohort default rates, matrices of financial stability, and any other element of review that the institution feels is appropriate. However, we've specifically named those three in the criteria as ones that institutions should be encouraged to use. Finally, we added student satisfaction as a requirement. So now one of the elements that is required for review and to go through the entire effectiveness review, so collection of data, reviewing that data, analyzing that data, and providing goals for improvement, is the element of student satisfaction. We know a lot of institutions have been using that, and now we're going to require it as one of the elements. So that is the change, the final revisions to the campus effectiveness plan, again for July 1st, 2016. Now I'll go back to Susan for branch and learning site procedures.
Thank you, Ian. This is another correction to our, or revision to our criteria that goes into effect immediately. So past effective date, January 1st, 2016. However, it is cleanup of language that was in the criteria, which many of you are probably aware we procedurally have not been using this language since we've recognized the substantive change process. So within that, and within our criteria, we had a few areas in the learning site and the branch criteria referencing final inclusion. If you look at the memo to the field, you'll see exactly where that is struck. And that, again, as I said, is referencing the fact that now with our decision-making body approving branch and learning sites with 50% or more of a program, that there isn't any need for saying final inclusion. Those activities are approved by the decision-making body, and then we continue to conduct the visits that we always have, but they are quality assurance monitoring visits. The next element I will speak to is the faculty assignments at the doctoral level. This is the third revision to our criteria that is effective January 1st, 2016, and it's section 3-7502. And this is an example of our memo to the field and the quality of that process with our council reviewing those comments from the memo to the field and making appropriate revisions to the language as it was written. So this particular section, the changes were the clarification that certification, where applicable, is required in addition to a terminal degree, that the doctoral faculty must have a doctoral or terminal degree related to the courses taught, and the requirement that doctoral level faculty must engage in research activities and must be encouraged to publish in professional journals. And I then will throw it back to Ian.
Thank you, Sue. As you can see, that concludes all the items we had. If you were listening to our webinar last October, following the August meeting and this one, you'll see that they were relatively similar. Of course, we went over the proposed changes last time, and this time we're going over the final criteria changes. These have now been made final and are effective as of the date that we discussed throughout. So now myself, Sue, and Al will take a look at some questions that have been posed to us, and we will try and answer as best we can those questions. So we'll read off the question that somebody has proposed and then answer it as we can. So I see one question up here referring back to our council action process that asks, what measures will be used to determine between whether an institution is placed on a compliance warning or a show cause directive? The definition difference of those is basically when an institution is determined to be out of compliance, they'd be given a compliance warning. The only difference between a show cause is when they've been determined to be out of compliance, and are unlikely to come into compliance prior to the maximum time frame of the institution being up. So there are some definitional changes. It would be basically at the council's discretion to determine whether they believe an institution is simply out of compliance and has the opportunity and the ability to get back into compliance, or whether a show cause directive should be issued to be that they're unlikely to be in compliance. The difference procedurally, there's no difference in that a letter would be provided in writing for this action and that the institution would have the opportunity to respond. The difference, mainly procedurally, is that a hearing would take place, which could be in person or in writing for a show cause, which would allow the institution to provide their response both in writing as well as to have an in-person hearing if desired.
So community resources was another question. What is expected of distance education programs in this area? Those of you that deliver distance ed know that it is often termed as a comparability to a residential. However, with respect to our standards and our criteria, there isn't a differentiation on the expectations in specific for distance ed versus residential when it comes to community resources. If you have a particular question on any one of those community resource areas and how that would be compatible with a distance ed delivery, you can definitely reach out to anyone, any staff at ACICS, Ian, myself, Dr. Gurabatham, and we can look at your particular situation. We also have a question, will we have access to the PowerPoint? I'll take that one, Ian. That's an easy answer. Yes, it is posted on our website. I think our second slide mentioned where you will be able to find that, and we attempt to get that up within a very reasonable time frame from today. I'm going to throw it back to Ian, who has one of the questions he's ready to answer.
All right, we have a question related to the teaching loads, and it asks that a slide says a bachelor's degree is required this faculty assignments, that the bachelor's degree is required for applied gen ed and standard gen ed courses. As I was reading this, I did recognize that the slide was incorrect or wasn't clear. So I'll revise the slides before they go up. But basically, the statement was not correct on the slide. Bachelor's degree is required for applied gen ed, and then master's degree is required for standard gen ed. So I think there was some confusion on that one on the slide, so my apologies for that. We have another question related to teaching loads. There's a question about that, asking whether the standard of 32 hours as the maximum teaching load has been removed. In essence, that is correct, that the numerical value of 32 hours is no longer within our criteria. So there's not a specific maximum amount of teaching loads that can be required. However, all the duties of the faculty, including administrative and preparations and size of classes, will be taken into account to determine whether teaching loads are reasonable or not. I'll continue. There's a question about student enrichment referred to community resources. We do have a glossary definition of the community resources, so you can take a look at that, which gives some examples, which I think is some other questions that people had about community resources, which has been revised to say that a variety of individuals, organizations, or businesses that provide information, guidance, or support to a specific program of study or career opportunity, such as professional and trade associations, employers, and guest speakers, would be the definition now for community resources. So that can include a number of opportunities, as Sue was saying, for online. Certainly guest speakers involved in the courses would be acceptable. Also getting individuals out into trade associations and perhaps into their externships is another possibility for community resources to serve as student enrichment and potential career opportunities.
And I'm going to take the next one. It's another housekeeping question. Are the changes effective January 1st reflected in the new report template that also is dated January 1st, 2016? They should be in those templates. And I just wanted to add a little pitch here. We have heard our members speak on how often Council was making revisions to criteria and how difficult that was to keep publishing new criteria each Council session. And so this is our attempt, and we're very excited over the success of it, of trying to publish once a year at a minimum, possibly twice if we have to now publish a new one in July when we implement the new July effective. But we're giving you well enough in advance notice of these changes. So please, if this benefits you, let us know in whatever manner you can. And if you see that it's not working for you, let us know that also. And I'm going to throw it back to Ian.
I see a couple questions relating to the campus effectiveness plan and the changes to that. The first is, would you repeat the 3 non-required elements that ACICS encourages institutions to include in the CEP? Those are specifically named graduation rates, cohort default rates, and matrices of financial stability. There are others that certainly the institution can take into account. In addition, those are encouraged for the institution to do, but they're not one of the 6 elements that are required within the CEP. However, we do highly encourage them. I'll say that again. Another one that I'll take a look at is in the definition of lecture in the glossary. Is it 2 hours of instruction preparation or 2 hours of student preparation assumed for each hour instruction? The definition would be our typical definition of lecture. We haven't changed any definitions to the lecture requirements. We cleaned up some dated language about whether that has to be in a classroom setting. Now that there are online, there are different distance education opportunities. We got out of lecture having to be in a classroom setting, so we haven't changed any requirements particular to the actual lecture hours. I see another one going back to applied and standard general education. Applied general education is specifically, and it's defined in our criteria, so you can certainly take a look in that. But applied general education are courses that are related to a particular career, such as business math or other type general education classes that are, a general ed but specific to a career. So we consider those applied general education, and those are acceptable only at a non-degree or an occupational associate's level. If you're at an academic associate's or a bachelor's level, if you have that curriculum, it's required what I term standard general education, which is just defined as general education, which is your typical general education courses that are required from the humanities, math and sciences, and social sciences is the third. I see another one, which is going back to the council action process. It asks, what is the maximum time frame to come into compliance? We have that stated. That's a Department of Education requirement that's stated within our criteria, which is dependent on the longest program at the institution. If your longest program at the institution is less than 1 year, your maximum time frame is 1 year, 12 months to get into compliance. If it's between 1 and 2 years, it would be 18 months to get into compliance, and if your longest program is more than 2 years, then you'd have 2 years to get into compliance, and all that is, again, stated in our criteria as the maximum time frame. I'll throw it over. I can take another one if...
Thank you, Ian. There are a couple other questions. How does ACICS define applied general education and other academic courses? I believe Ian has already addressed that. If your specific question was not, please reach out to me or Ian later and we'll address that one. There was a question within an occupational associate's degree program, does an applied gen ed have to have the word applied in the course title? No, it does not. When staff evaluates those program requests, it's through that evaluation that we recognize that the gen ed is specific to the program of study and therefore would be considered applied. The name or the memo to the field indicates you encourage inclusion of cohort default, financial stability, etc. In CEP, aside from student satisfaction, which is a new required element, are these other items mandatory, leading to a citation during an evaluation visit? No, they are not. Only if we list them as required elements are they required. We do try and provide as much guidance and examples as we can to the CEP. There are those of you that know and don't need that guidance, and there are those of you that might be new to it and seeking some of that guidance. So again, the CEP is an important document and we appreciate the questions with respect to them. There's another on could you clarify the difference in gen ed and applied gen ed? I think we can take that one off-site if you have specific questions further on those classifications. We don't want to ignore any of your questions, but I think that's been asked and answered. As an evaluator, when will the web slides update list of schools for year 2016? Very soon. It's again one of our procedures, and this is January, so we will get those posted and visible to the public in the very near future. And is there a calendar with all of the council meeting dates somewhere on the website? Our council, I'm not sure that we do publish on the website the council dates. We can certainly look into that. They meet 3 times a year. They're in April, August, and December. And we do flex, whether it's, we try and get it to the first of the month as much as possible. But if that becomes something that we need to do, or if that has a true value, we can most definitely start publishing that. And I'm going to throw it to Ian for a couple of questions.
All right, we have some more just trying to clarify some of the items we discussed. So there was one about, please confirm that all faculty teaching applied general education courses need a master's degree. No, the standard, and I'm sorry if my slides confused things, we'll have it up on the web, correct? Which is that applied general education courses only require a bachelor's degree in 15 hours or equivalent of coursework. General education courses, so those that are not applied, but you know, specifically general education courses require 18 hours an equivalent and a master's degree. So I hope that clarifies the issues between applied general education and general education. I'll throw it back to Sue. She sees one she can handle.
Well, actually, I'm going to read the question, and I'm going to throw it to someone else to answer. But the question was, has there been any thought given to ACICS support for some kind of legal action to compel regionally accredited institutions to accept transfer credits from nationally accredited institutions, or to raise such an issue with DOE? And Dr. Gray is still here and mic'd, and so I'm going to throw that question to him.
Thank you, Sue. Well, the transfer credit issue, of course, is a vexing issue for national accredited institutions. To answer your question directly, there's been no consideration at this time to entering any legal action relating to how transfer credits are accepted by regionally accredited institutions from nationally accredited institutions. But having said that, we continue to work diligently on reminding regionally accredited institutions when transfer credit issues arise that the department and others have indicated that in no case should accreditation be considered a reason for transfer of credits being rejected. In other words, whether you're nationally or regionally accredited as an institution, both of those are considered to be equivalent by the Department of Education. Both of those sources of accreditation are recognized by the U.S. Department of Education, and in the case of ACICS, are also recognized by CHIA, which of course recognizes all the regionally accredited institutions, or has them as members. So, you know, we advocate for transfer of credit. We've done some research on transferability of credits among nationally accredited institutions, and on a case-by-case basis where barriers come up, we advocate and work to remove those barriers through directly interceding where possible with the institutions in question. But that's a long answer to the question you asked, which are we looking at legal advocacy at this point? And the answer at this point is we have not entertained that thought.
So I will answer a couple community resource questions that have come up. We changed this language to make it more clear. It's certainly more clear than it was, but it looks like there still needs to be some clarification through this webinar, so I'll hope to clarify. One question asked, does ACICS indicate a satisfactory number of community activities per program each annual year? We do not. We specifically, as you can see in the language, did not have any prescribed amount of activities per year or per term. They should obviously be, conducted periodically and throughout, consistently throughout the institution's or the academic program. But we don't have any particular number. We have said, however, one of the changes that they must be varied on each program, and there must be a variety. So, that indicates certainly more than one and a variety of amounts. So just not one type of community resource, such as a number of guest speakers. There should be a different variety of them. There are a couple of questions that ask about externship and clinical opportunities and whether those would count as community resources. They certainly are activities related to student enrichment and are out in the community, so they may be included as a community resource. However, remember that there must be a variety. So simply one activity or one type of activity is not going to meet the requirements. There must be a number of different types, so a variety of activities to take place. I think Sue had a question, had a question she'll answer, so I'll throw it back to Sue.
So there was a question, are there any issues with current students contacting prospective students, referring to the recruitment policy? Unfortunately or fortunately, word of mouth is one of the #1 ways that you probably all realize your prospective students are notified of the value of your institution. So it was a pretty general question, but no, we encourage word of mouth and shared experiences with others so that they can enroll in our member institutions. There was another question with respect to, is there an update on the DBA program receiving approval from DOE? And I'm going to throw my mic to Mr. Tony Beta, and he'll speak to that.
Thanks, Susan Greer. This is Tony Beta, and the update, DBA is the Doctoral in Business Administration. The application for re-recognition that ACICS submitted earlier this month to the Department of Education includes the formal request for expansion of scope to the doctoral level, specifically using evidence of our prior evaluation of the doctoral in business administration and doctoral in computer engineering, so DBA and DCE degrees. That request for expansion of scope will be processed through the department over the next couple of months. Sometime in late March or April, we will receive some kind of feedback from our analyst at the department regarding the sufficiency of our application and the evidence that we provided. We'll have a chance to make modifications or enhancements to remedy any deficiencies, and then the full application will become public on the department's website around mid-May, before we and members of our leadership team and council go before NACICS, that's the National Advisory Committee that makes recommendations about the scope of recognition for accreditors. Before that advisory committee meets in early June to make a final determination about two things. Number one, is ACICS in general performing its accreditation process according to department expectations and regulations? And number two, has ACICS sufficiently demonstrated that it has the capacity, experience, and effectiveness in evaluating the quality of doctoral level programs? So we really won't have an answer of what we've provided to this person's question until probably the first or second week in June at the earliest.
Thank you to our special guest, Tony. We added him here just to provide that guidance. So thank you, Tony, for that. I'll answer a few of some last questions. I'll note we did read all your questions, so if you provided a question, we have read them. Some are not pertinent to this webinar, so if you have a specific question that wasn't answered here, please ask the appropriate staff member, and we'll certainly be happy to get that answer. But we wanted to keep these somewhat specific to the AWARE webinar and the memo to the field. So there is one about the template. Is there a new template posted for the new CEP guidelines? We're working on a template for the CEP. We possibly may have some changes that we're looking through this year as well. So there hasn't been specifically a new template for those changes, but that is coming. So we'll have that for you in time. So that'll come shortly. Other than that, I don't see any specific questions that haven't somehow been previously answered. Again, though, if you feel like your question hasn't been answered, you can certainly reach out to myself, and I'll direct you to the right place to get your question answered. But seeing as there are no further comments from our side, and we've gotten the questions from you, I'll give a final plug for this AWARE webinar, and we'll have, as Sue mentioned previously, we'll have these slides up, and we'll have this presentation included within that. That'll be at obviously www.acics.org under events and the events workshops tab under webinars, and then you'll of course see it under the AWARE webinar for this January AWARE webinar. So thank you again for everybody's participation, for the questions you asked. They were great questions, and I hope we clarified some of them for you. And with that said, we will conclude the AWARE webinar for January 2016. Thank you again.